Randomly with Ronnie Jr.
All right, so now we are chatting with NATASHA Martinez. NATASHA has done a lot of different things, everything from Miss California USA 2015, a Laker girl, you've had that experience. When it comes to the hosting world, Complex, LATV, American Latino TV, Collider, and even the E! Channel. NATASHA, welcome. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling today is a good day, right? It's like during this time, it's a day by day thing, but today is really good. And I'm really happy to be talking with you. These things help, right? Still communicating, seeing friends. So this is a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, with the jobs like American Latino TV, I've worked that project as well. I worked a season on Complex as well. I want to talk about your hosting because that seems to be such your big deal at the moment, and you're continuing to book new work and such a different breath of fresh air when you go do it. I think everyone enjoys seeing it. But can I talk about like this Miss California USA 2015? What was that experience like? And was that something you had sort of built up to for a very long time?
Absolutely. So yeah, my experience as Miss California USA was a dream come true because I worked so hard at it. I think a lot of people don't realize that like not everyone just steps on the stage and walks away a winner, like there's only one winner per pageant, which means depending how many girls there were, there's like, 100 plus non-winners, right? And so I think the most part of my pageant experience was that I really learned the value of failing and picking myself back up because of something that I really wanted. So I think that's the biggest takeaway that I took from that experience. But I started pageants when I think I was 17, and I started doing Latin pageants. So I did a pageant called Miss Pan American that like introduced me into this world. And once I started kind of climbing up those ranks, I decided, I'm like, you know what, like I want to go to Miss USA. Like I want to be Miss California USA. Got into that pageant circuit, and overall it took me like 4 years before I finally won Miss California. So like I said, it's like 4 years of failing before winning. But it was a ton of fun. I learned so much about myself, and a lot of that transpires into my career today. So yeah, I benefited a lot from my pageant experience. And I got my shiny crown still and my sash. It's nice to like look over and see that and look back at pictures. Some of these glam shots, like I'm like, oh my God, who was she?
Yeah. Years
But
ago, and you sort of evolve as a person, but it's such a good memory to look back at. I wanted to know, as far as like your background, like with support, like did you have one of those families that supported this type of endeavor? Sometimes that doesn't happen. What was it like for you? And you grew up in Southern California for the most part.
yeah, born and raised Southern California. So yeah, fortunately, I really did have a great support system. And I think that I didn't realize it until I started making friends who had similar like goals as mine. And I could see that their support system was not as strong as mine, and I could see how it wore on them and how it maybe deterred them from like trying again, putting themselves out there. And I think that was the first time that I realized like, wow, I'm really lucky to have my parents support me no matter what I do. I mean, like my mom was a total stage mom. She wasn't like annoying or anything, but she was like the one that was promoting me, and my family would show up to pageants and bring maracas and like shake them out in the audience and signs and everything. So yeah, they were always very supportive. My mom is an immigrant from Nicaragua, and I think like when she came here, she realized that she wanted her kids to have all the opportunities that she didn't. Her family, like my grandpa, was very much in like the medical field. And so when she was growing up, it was like, you're going to be in the medical field, whether it be a doctor, a nurse, dentist, whatever. She ended up being a microbiologist, but she liked it. But however, she had a lot of other passions that she never got to explore. So I think with me and my two brothers, when she put us in things like piano or art classes or dance classes, she always encouraged us, like, if this is what you love to do, like, do it, like, we'll support you. However, she was also very big on education. Like, she really instilled that going to college was a huge thing. So that was kind of her thing, was like, I will support you if you guys finish school. So I thought it was a pretty good,
Exchange. Yeah, I think it's so cool though when you see, like, I've like in length I've watched many like J-Lo documentaries or whatnot, and it's like I remember she always talks about how her mother Guadalupe, she maybe wanted to perform, but just based on the time or based on history or whatever, it just didn't happen. So this, it's cool to see this next generation. This would be you in your case, to your mom. You get to do it, or you know, you had the ambition to do it. I could totally see your mom being so excited about that and like vicariously living through her daughter, you know?
Percent. Like her favorite story is like, she's like, you know, when I was in Nicaragua, I was on TV too. Like, so basically they have these kind of like American Bandstand, like dance marathon shows type of things in Nicaragua. So she was like just like a little kid, and she would be on dancing. They would broadcast her on the TV. It's like, she loves to dance. She's a very vibrant spirit like me. So I could definitely see that, you know, if she had some of the opportunities that she gave me, that she probably would have pursued some of those passions as well. But it's fun. It's fun to share some of those things. And that's something that I miss about performing in general, whether it be dance or being on the stage competing in a pageant, is like sharing that joy with my family, because they really do like have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. What would you name something along the journey of being in pageants, and then Miss California USA 2015 is such like this iconic moment. Would you be able to name something where people on the outside don't know how challenging it is? What is the toughest part about it? Is it the being consistent for such a long period of time? Or is there something I maybe don't know? Because it's different, you know?
It's a totally different world. And, you know, it's kind of like, in any industry, there are like weird pockets that like have, you know, certain things where it's like, oh yeah, to the outside looking in, you wouldn't think that would be a thing that they did. So I'm sure there are a ton of like pageant stuff. Obviously, like diet and exercise is a huge part of both pageants and dance. So that was pretty hard. But I think the hardest part for me, just like getting my like mental space right. Like, I think that competing in pageants specifically was like a huge mental game. And if I used to talk a lot more to like girls who wanted to compete when I was like in the circuit. Now I don't really talk about it as much, but I would give them the advice of like, that is your winning point. You know, if you're strong here and you can see the vision and you're manifesting it, like, then that's already the majority of the competition. Everything else, like, you know, can fall into place. But if you're showing up in like a bad headspace, or you're not really feeling like 100% confident within yourself, then it doesn't matter if you have the six pack or the dress or, you know, the expensive weave. Like, it's not going to translate on stage, because basically what a pageant is making a decision, choosing a winner based off of a first impression, really. So it's like, you're talking to the judges, you only have a couple of minutes, sometimes just 1 minute, to make like your impression. And that's going to last throughout the competition. And truthfully, like, you know, of course you'll see beautiful women, but it's the people that really leave an impact on you that are going to make you remember them. So if you're showing up in a bad headspace and there's a weird energy off of you, you might look great, but you might not feel great to the person that you're interacting with. So it's a huge mental game. And what I did was just like, I wrote a lot back in the day, just wrote everything down, really was in tune with my feelings. And again, it's something that I feel is a skill that I use today, because in the industry, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you're auditioning constantly, you're getting rejected from jobs, you know, you're seeing other people succeed. And if you allow yourself to get in a negative headspace, like, you're going to want to give up. But I really feel like the industry is a game of longevity. And if you can stay in it and stay positive and see your vision, then your time will come.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you were able to speak about some of those things, because, you know, there is that idea like, oh, you know, these are beautiful women who are doing the pageants, but there is knowing, you know, working two jobs with you, you know, sort of crossing paths rather with you.
Yeah.
I know, we know you're beautiful. We also know you're like really intelligent, but it's also what I always, from the initial meeting of you, was you do have like a lovable energy. Like, you laugh, you giggle, and you really make the room a little bit brighter. And so I don't know if that comes from pageants or great childhood, being reared in such a good way, but I think it's helped your career. I want to talk about the hosting stuff real quick, but before that, can we do chronologically? I believe you being a Laker girl was something that came after Miss USA, the Miss California, correct?
Well, it's kind of a weird timeline. So the pageants came first, and then I took about a year off in 2011 when I did the Laker Girls. So basically, yeah, I started competing in pageants specifically for Miss California in like 2009, I believe. And I'd obviously grown up being a dancer, and one of my best friends was like, Natasha, I saw this audition for Laker Girls, like, you should do it. And I was like, no, like, why? Like, I don't know. I've always been a great performer, but like not that great of a dancer, technically speaking. So I was like, I'm not going to make that audition. There's no way. And she was like, just do it. And I just did it. Like, one thing I will say about like past Natasha is I was just like, okay, like, I would just throw myself out there. Sometimes I need to like remember a little bit about that, about myself. But I auditioned, I made it to the finals, didn't make the team. So then I competed for Miss California that year. But the following year I trained really hard, ended up making the Laker Girls. So it's a super strenuous schedule, and it's really like a full-time job. So you don't really have, many opportunities to do anything else. My life was basically school and Laker Girls. So I took a year off from competing. And I remember like watching the pageant that year that I wasn't there. I was like, oh, like that's still my dream. Like I still want to do that. So I knew the following year that I needed to compete again, and basically kind of chose the pageant route rather than staying on the team.
Do you have anything that, because they're all sources of discipline, which is what I love to talk about, and I love to see sort of like successes, but I think setbacks are very important when we look at any star, any entertainer. When we look at J-Lo, we could sort of be in awe of what she's done, but for every success, there's, 22 failed auditions or whatnot. I'm not saying you failed, but it's it's what I like to talk about. My question to you is, looking back at the Laker Girl experience, what does that feel like now? Pretty much an iconic position. How do you feel looking back at that amazing experience? But
it's extremely surreal. Like I think even more surreal than competing at Miss USA, just because like being a Laker girl was such a like iconic pop culture figure for so many years, and I think it still is. Like I think it's like Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders first, and then Laker girls. Like those two teams have cheerleaders, right?
And you're an LA girl too. Like and this is no knock. You're not like somebody who moved to Los Angeles. Like this is you. Exactly. You grew up, knowing the Staples Center was being built after the Forum. Like this is the big for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And my dad was a huge Lakers fan, and I'm not really into sports, but watching basketball with him and watching specifically the Lakers was something that like we could bond over. So when I made the team, it was awesome for like our relationship, because not only was he extremely excited to like see me dance and flourish and put all those dance lesson money to work, because dance lessons are expensive, my parents will tell you, but he was also excited to just be at the games and experience that, and him and my mom were able to go to games together. So it really like brought our family together. It's kind of a weird feeling though, because while it was extremely exciting and an incredible experience, it was also probably one of the most stressful times of my life. And when I think back about it, it probably was an unhealthy space for me to be in personally. It was a lot of pressure, and it just a lot of it had to do with the body image that was expected from a cheerleader. And I look back at like photos, and I obviously was extremely fit. I was dancing all the time, watching what I ate, but yet I still had this twisted idea of what my body looked like, in part because of what the expectations were set from the organization. And our coach was extremely strict. So there was a lot of like weird fear tactics that probably were happening, that I think it was the first time I had experienced that in like a work environment. And I don't think that I really was handling it very well. So what a lot of people don't know is I actually auditioned for Laker Girls for a second year, and I didn't make it.
Mm.
And that was a huge blow to my ego. It was a huge heartbreak because I felt like it's like when you
just because you make it once, you don't necessarily come back.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to audition every year. And so basically I'm leading up to these auditions. I'm stressed out. There's so much pressure for a returning girl to make it again, because essentially if you don't make it again, it's like, oh, well, like, did I lose it? Like, you know, am I not good enough anymore? And I was like 19 years old, like still kind of like getting out, like figuring things out for myself. And yeah, I think that was the first heartbreak that I ever really experienced. So when I didn't make it, like I feel like I was depressed, like I was sad all the time. I felt like I had placed my self-worth in this position that I had, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and I was like, well, what do I do? Like, who am I? Like, you know, it's just these like really the first time in my life that I had addressed those feelings. And so actually when I decided to compete for Miss California again, I really credit that journey between not making the Laker Girls and deciding to put myself out there for the pageant as like a huge turning point for me, because I was able to really tackle those feelings of you know, thinking that I wasn't good enough or not worthy, like figuring out where to place my worth, and just really working through that. And I remember when I finally did compete for California that year, I was just in so much of a better place mentally, physically, and just learned a lot about myself. And that's what I mean, is like picking yourself back up. Like you have to experience those failures. Like it's scary. Nobody wants to fail, right? No one wants to feel like they messed up or they dropped the ball, but like you have to experience that in order to show yourself like what you're made of. So my Laker Girl experience was beautiful. I made so many friends from it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I can't even believe that like happened, because it really was like being on the court was the best feeling in the world.
Adrenaline, I'm assuming. Lots of adrenaline and excitement, yeah.
Excitement. Dance is my passion, so it's like I got to do what like I loved 100% all the time, and be in these crazy situations. But you know, it was a hard learning experience for me. I'm super thankful for it, and yeah, I don't know.
No, it's good. And I always think like, yes, it took a blow to the ego maybe, but it did shift you to another direction, which is great. And I think that every time, and we all get down and out about our not failures, but we get down and out about unfavorable situations.
Yeah.
But I always say that is your one chance to get off the hamster wheel. You know what I mean? Like, because sometimes you don't even know that you're stuck in maybe things that you thought you wanted to do, or something that someone else tells you should do. Should is a 4-letter word, basically.
Yeah.
So that's a great transition to go back into the pageant circuit and dominate. When you go from that circuit, and then we sort of see now such a domination on your success as a host, you know, Complex, LATV, American Latino TV, Collider, E. What was that transition like? Was it a smooth transition, or was there a couple years in the midst of that took a while to sort of get it?
I would say it was relatively smooth. So what happened was, after I was giving up my crown to like the next year's winner, so like giving up my title is basically what they would like say. So I was giving up my title, and I had a commercial agency contract like as part of my prize when I won. So I was with this like commercial agent. I didn't book anything, but they did set me up on LA casting. And so I would get all the LA casting, you know, emails. And it's not often that I would see a host position. So I saw the host position, and it was for Collider, and I had no idea what it was, but I was like, okay, like I wasn't like really working at the time because, you know, I'd quit my full-time job after I was done with Miss USA. So that was kind of a bit of a struggle, because they hired me as a host, but they didn't really have like a solid like idea of what that was. So I was kind of floating around, not doing anything. And I was like, no, I cannot be in a 9-to-5 right now. Like, not, you know, it's like you hire me as a host, but here I am just sitting. Like,
Yeah.
I did build up some editing skills though, so that was nice.
Yeah.
But so I basically quit my job before getting another. I was passing on my title, found this Collider audition, walked in, did like a quick read, and I left. And I was like, I'm not sure how that went. But later, they called me and they're like, can you start tomorrow? And I'm like, okay. And it was kind of like this situation where Collider has an extremely loyal fan base. And they really welcomed me and sort of propelled me. So I will always thank my days at Collider for really helping me out. And I think too, it was one of the first like live stream YouTube shows, at least for me, you know, and it helped me understand the digital, you know, wave of hosting, because I think like the days of growing up and watching like Ryan Seacrest or Juliana Rancic like on TV, like those, like that road is not really used anymore. So a lot of people are coming up in this digital age. So I feel like joining Collider really helped me like have to figure that out really quickly. And from there, Collider was owned by Complex back in the day. So then Complex brought me over to do news, and then it just kind of went.
Yeah.
But you know, now that it's going, I will say maybe the struggle didn't happen in the beginning, but I think now that it's going, this to kind of keep that momentum is always very hard, because obviously, you know, as well, like auditions come and go, the industry changes. One day it's a show, the next day it's canceled. So kind of finding ways to evolve within the industry and evolve with yourself as a talent is really difficult. And I think that that's when you have to kind of like, that's when you need to just be more determined, not more determined, but just have that like lasting Energizer Bunny type of mentality.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Here we go. Next thing.
Yeah, and make it fun. You know, you got to like remember why you started to do it. Sometimes the business washes that off. I feel like I've made that error where I've been so crushed by the business, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember being a kid and getting the toilet paper roll and like putting it up to my hand, looking at the mirror in the bathroom and saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like I was on TRL. So sometimes we forget. Yeah, we forget that pure moment. I think we do. Can you talk about, and I don't want to use too much of your time here, but talk about some of the highlights of the Complex experience. Like I said, I worked Complex on Fuse. It's a show that got reproduced to Fuse TV. Such a fun experience. But while I was in that building in the New York City office, it was cool to connect with you in a way, seeing you just do so well at Complex. So I want to know, what are some of your just excited moments that you could look back on and say, this was a bit of a highlight of my hosting career?
I mean, I gotta say, working on that Fuse project with you was a huge highlight for my like role at Complex, because I started as a weekend anchor. So I would just work a couple of days out of the week doing like green screen reads and reports on what was going on over the weekend. But, you know, I always wanted to get into like celebrity reporting, more like stuff like type of things, like pop culture. And Complex they weren't really in that mix, you know, like the pop culture celebrity part. Like we weren't really doing red carpets. We were doing like interviews with musicians or, you know, stylists or sneakerheads or whatever. And that was cool. But I was still pretty new at that time. So a lot of those opportunities were going to like the more experienced hosts, which of course should be the way. But the Fuse introduction, which was going to junkets like Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg, of course there was the second act junket. Actually, that wasn't Fuse, that was Complex News. But I got
but I remember that. I remember that because that was so Natasha is right there doing the second act press junket, and it's Natasha on one side, it's J-Lo and Leah Remini. I've done junkets. It's a bit nerve-wracking. What did that feel like for you? Because I know you like J-Lo like I like J-Lo.
Oh, I love J-Lo. And that is like she was my dream like interview. She was like on top of my list. So now I'm like, oh, wow, I already got to do that. Like, that's cool. I'd love to do it again, but it was extremely nerve-wracking. I was very, very nervous. But it's kind of like once you're in the room, you just gotta go. Like you have to like forget all the nerves. Sometimes you even have to forget like the prep that you have and just sort of be present. But yeah, J-Lo was a huge highlight. Mariah Carey was a huge highlight. And I've probably never been more nervous for an interview than for Mariah Carey's interview. I was like terrified.
That makes sense though, because don't she have certain rules about lighting, and you probably can't look her in the eye.
Yeah, she does.
All
Well,
respect to Mariah, but you know, she is something different. Yeah.
you know what I love about Mariah, and you know, I always knew that she had this this reputation for being a diva, but when I was watching all of her interviews, trying to get, you know, my research done, I love that she just owns it, and she kind of like laughs about it too, but it's like, oh, you know, I have to have my lighting, you know, and it's just,
Yeah.
that's just who she is. Like, she doesn't try and hide it. And I will say she was extremely sweet. Like, she was so kind. There was a part in the interview where I asked something that her publicist was like, not, like, they were like, no, we're not going to talk about that today. And she like threw me a bone and was like, well, since you said this, it's like, Mariah Carey does not have to throw me a bone. Like, she could very well just cross her arms and be like, next question. Like, it's her 800th billionth like interview. So she did not have to do that. And I just remember being like, yo, Mariah, you are amazing.
I've never met J-Lo or Mariah, you know, but I think sometimes these people who have the tougher images, sometimes they're not actually that awful, you know. It's just, you got to think about it like this. This is not like you're having a conversation with the clerk at CVS. Like, there's an entire multi-million business attached to these people. So sometimes there is a strictness that needs to be there for them to continue to catapult this successful career.
Absolutely.
It makes sense. Can you talk about an experience with American Latino TV? At the point that you were working on the project, it was a nationally syndicated program, and I think that has to be somewhat exciting for you in the sense of what you told me earlier about, you know, your mother and her American Latino experience. Tell me about how you got associated with that project. Of course, I worked with you on that project as well. Writing raps. Now, for those who don't know what raps are when the segment airs, it's about a 4-minute vignette, docu-style. But before that, we have Natasha come in and she does like a little intro. One thing that was cool about you and Valerie Ortiz, who was the past host as well, writing raps for each of you was so cool because I felt like I started after a while to like know your tone, your beat, your energy. I'm like, I'd write it. I'm like, no. I got to go this way because this is more of a Natasha sounding sentence. I don't know if anyone else did it, other producers who were writing raps, but I know for sure I felt like I connected to you by that. I never told you that, but
I'm not even lying or gassing you up. Every time I read one of your segments, I knew it was yours because not only was it a great segment and a great like person to interview, but it just was like a fun rap, you know, like it wasn't like basic. No shade to like whoever was writing the segments, but you could tell that there was so much like thought into it. But yeah, I loved American Latino so much. I wish I was still doing it. But basically, I think the most special part about that show was, like you said, it like really represented my existence, right? Like, I think Latinos were always like expected to be like a stereotype or be 100% of like what somebody expects you to be. Like, that's just not how I was raised, you know. When my mom came here, she married my father, who's already 3rd generation Mexican, so he and his family like don't really speak Spanish. Like they understand it, but they grew up American. Like, they spoke English in the house. So when my brothers and I were growing up, we learned Spanish, but we just spoke English in the house. It was more comfortable. As a result, I am not fluent. It's something that I wish that I was, but I've always just grown up being like, oh, you're not really like Latin. You can't even speak Spanish. You're whitewashed. You're a coconut. Like, you're a white girl. And
You
I'm
felt
like,
that? You would feel that sometimes, Natasha? That's
all the time. I still feel it. And it's not that I feel it. I still feel I feel connected to my roots. It's that people tell me that that's what, that I'm like, oh, I'm like a white. No, I'm not. I like relate on so many levels to my culture, even beyond just being Nicaraguan or Mexican. Like, you know, it's so funny. Like, in this quarantine, I've joined TikTok and I'm getting a lot of like Latin TikToks, and it's like from all different like cultures, and you relate, right? Just hearing like a grandma speak Spanish, you're like, oh, like that reminds me of my grandma, or like certain music or things like that. So I hated when people were like, no, that's not you. Like, it's the classic, like, you're not Latin enough and you're not like American enough, right? So what I liked about the show was it was like, no, millions of Latin Americans that feel the same way, that are proud of their heritage, but also like grew up in the American culture as well, and are now using both of those things to pursue their dreams. So it was very much like, I felt like so connected to it, and it was a lot of fun. I have to say that probably the most memorable part about it is we got to go to Puerto Rico to work with the U.S. Army down there, and I got to, it was my first time in Puerto Rico, and I just like experienced the city, and of course talk to the Army personnel over there, and just really like see a different side of, you know, the United States. And it was really, really amazing.
But I do think, and going off what you said, working on that project, American Latino TV, was so rewarding because of that, because of certain things that had been troubling along growing up. I put my blood, sweat, and tears into that project. And I know you did too, because we knew that at the end of the day, we were telling some fascinating stories of the American Latino experience. It was really fun, really, really fun.
It was really fun. And I hope that, you know, I hope that more outlets kind of take note of that. You know, I think that we're still in this like weird time of putting people into boxes, that it's just going to take a minute. But I hope that more people really find the value in the mixture of cultures, and how that makes an individual, and why that should be celebrated no matter what their ethnic background is.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, I loved that show. Shout out to American Latino.
That's such a great team. Now you, just wrapping up, kind of let me know some of the current projects you're working on, be it some of the stuff you're still doing with Complex, or new stuff you're doing with Complex, some new stuff you're doing with American Latino's parent company, which is LATV Networks, and any other fun stuff that we should just know about you.
Yeah. Well, obviously with the pandemic going on, I, like so many performers and people in the industry, have had shoots being canceled, or projects that were supposed to happen that didn't happen. But I am thankful that Complex is really being innovative in the way that they're still creating content. And ironically, I'm probably a lot busier now than I am before we were on this stay-at-home order. So I guess the latest, I'm still doing Complex News, so you can see my videos go up on that YouTube channel. But the latest is I'm doing a series called House Calls. It's an Instagram live series. And basically it's about talking to medical professionals, psychologists, fitness experts about the wellness, health, and mental health surrounding coronavirus and what we're all experiencing right now. So it's kind of like, you know, just going straight to the source. So I interviewed Dr. Mike for our first episode, and about everything that we should be knowing about COVID-19, whether it be the false rumors that are going around, what's the best way to wear your face mask. You should be washing them after every time you wear your face mask. The gloves don't actually work if you're not wearing them properly. So he's just kind of debunking certain things and kind of giving us an insight, because he's in the hospitals, you know, working with patients as well and seeing it firsthand. Then we had another episode with Rashawn Miller, who is a psychotherapist, and he's a mental health advocate. So he was talking about all of the mental health aspects that we need to be aware of during this time. So like I said, connecting with people over Zoom or FaceTime, like those things are really going to uplift your spirits. Going outside for a walk, it helps you, right? Because we're all in this same situation,
Yeah.
and you can't deny that it's going to take a toll on your mental health. And I think a lot of people think mental health has to do with mental illness, but it doesn't. Like, we all have mental health issues. So it's just a good space to, like, we spend an hour every Wednesday at p.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern, and just like hash it out with some professionals and, you know, answer questions in the chat. So that's been pretty good. It's on Instagram Live. I forgot if I mentioned that or not. So that's my latest project. But yeah, I've been going live with LATV as well. I have 2 shows with them. One is called Get It, which is a all-female talk show just about being American Latinas and just, you know, talking about our experience. So, and then I have another one called The Hub on LATV, which is with Bruno Soroso-Yoa, and we're just co-hosts talking about all of the trending things on the internet. So we've gone live a couple of times, but unfortunately a lot of our production has been halted because of what's going on. But and then, like I said, I'm on TikTok working real hard to get them views.
Yeah. Well, you throw in a little bit of a dance. I'm sure maybe you do a J-Lo dance. It'll go for you for sure.
It's a lot of fun. It's fun.
Two last things, and I'll let you go. The first one is, because I talk about how careers are, it's peaks and valleys for all of us, even the most successful. I want you to tell me somebody you sort of look to as a bit of a role model in the industry. It could be an actor, singer, whatever. It could be a television host that you look to, and you've always kind of got a connection with them because they've inspired you. Who would that be, Natasha?
Yeah, the person that I look up to, her name's Liz Hernandez. She started out on the radio scene with Big Boy in the Neighborhood.
Oh my gosh, you could play Liz Hernandez's sister in the Lifetime movie. I never noticed that.
Yeah, I forget how I discovered her. I'm not sure, but I had always followed her career over Instagram, and what I love is I connect with her because she is somebody that you can just tell, and I've never met her, but I know a lot of people that know her, and they like validate my assumptions, but you can just tell that she always comes from like a pure place. Like she like radiates when she's doing anything, and she's obviously like gone through the ranks from radio to television. She's worked with E. She last worked with Access Hollywood as one of their main anchors. So she's gone through all of these ropes and sort of like touched those milestones. But what I love now is she's no longer working for Access Hollywood, but she started her own, I guess you could say, blog. It's called Wordiful, and it's talking about the power of words and speaking and just really keeping in touch with what you are putting out into the universe, what messages you're spreading person to person, and really kind of breaking those things down. So I love that she went for the dream, and now she found something that I'm sure is a passion of hers that is really helping a lot of other people. And that's something that I eventually want to do. Like, I understand that this industry is weird, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you get the dream, sometimes the dream shifts. And I think that it's important to figure out what your passion is and know that is more important than maybe like interviewing Brad Pitt on the red carpet like once, like you have to find the meaning behind why you're in media. And I feel like she really found that meaning for her. I'm still on that journey figuring out what that's going to look like for me, but that's why I like to look up to her and kind of see like what steps she's taking, what her path has been. And yeah, like people have told me before that I look like her, especially when I had my like lighter hair.
I never noticed it till you said it, and it took me out. I did work at the Power. I worked at MS when it was MS for Moving 93.9 and a little bit of Power 106. So I've seen her in the office, a bit. Not anything where I would say that I close or know her really, but seem to be dedicated and ambitious as all heck. And you do point on something that's interesting. Yes, she's done the big interviews, et cetera, but then like to shift and to transition and reinvent yourself, like you're kind of saying, she could have stayed at that moment of, celebrity, but it seems like something spoke to her to do, a little bit more, based on your intention to kind of put those words out there. So
I think
reinvention is important.
Yeah, I think when we're like in the industry, like of course we all have these like high aspirations, which are amazing, and I want everybody that has those dreams to like achieve them. But like media doesn't just have to be celebrity, it's about like connecting with people, and that's why I like what she's doing. And hopefully we can all figure out a way of how to connect with someone on a personal level that's not just like, when's the next movie coming out.
I love that. And I don't know if you get with the concept that I have on this platform. I could have literally said, let's have a conversation, Natasha. And then it's like about Tiger King or something kind of uninteresting. It's a hot button thing. It potentially goes viral. Natasha says blank about Tiger King, but that's cute. It's just not what I wanted to do. Like, not right now. I wanted to do like the who, what, where, and why. And then when I look at your career and see this California USA 2015, the Laker Girl experience, which I knew a lot of that just from knowing you, but I didn't know it, like it kind of went and then came back. And then I didn't know that timeline. That timeline was fantastic. So I'm most interested in people's reshift, your longevity, your tenacity to continue forward. And like Joan Rivers, reinvention, like reinvent yourself, which you're still on that journey. My last question to you, this is going to be an easy one. I ask everybody to tell me something amazing about J-Lo. So you can do what you want with it.
I mean, listen, if anybody watched her Super Bowl performance and does not worship her after, then you guys are crazy. Like 50 years old, not skipping a beat. I lose my breath when I'm walking up the stairs. Like she was going, like I can't tell you when I watched that in a bar back when we could go to bars. I was screaming, like I was like, ah! It was like I was in like taken by the Holy Spirit in church or something. I mean, that performance was everything.
I was so nervous as a J-Lo fan. Like I was like, and all credit to her nerve and her audacity and the gall. I mean, to go on after Shakira, like Shakira is hyphenated. And I was like, oh my God, J-Lo, you got the nerve. And I was worried. I felt like my heart was beating. And for her to do what she did, it's just, it's why I always look to her as somebody motivating. Because I think we sometimes as people talk ourselves down, like we don't deserve certain things. And I know there's mixed emotions about J-Lo, but for me, I use that as when I get into my lame Ronnie moments, I'm like, no, you better put that J-Lo glow on it and do what you do. So
yes, no, it's so true. Yeah, I really respect like her work ethic, how she's also been able to reinvent herself, and yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, like she is a performer, and I think that's why like I love her so much, is I love performing too, and I'm just like, yeah, like get it. And the fact that she's 50 doing that, like it just gives me like, I don't know, it should give all women like a sense of empowerment. We're always so focused on like, oh, you lose it after you're 30. Like, J-Lo said, no, you don't.
Well, we wish they all could be California girls like Natasha Martinez. Let us know where we can follow you, because I feel like that's a great source of where you post on, the new Complex stuff, the new LATV stuff, etc.
Definitely. Well, I am on every single platform, but the one that I like upkeep the most and post about all the updates is my Instagram. It's at Natasha Lexis _ just one A. A lot of people put two A's, just one A.
Natasha Alexa. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
On YouTube and Twitter, TikTok, everything.
Yeah. How's that been going for you? Your experience with YouTube? That's something kind of new for you, also.
A little bit new, I gotta admit. It's been very slow since the start of the year. So there were some vlogs in the bank and definitely plans to have continued that. But now I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out how I can vlog from my house or my apartment.
Yeah, going from the kitchen to the room. It's like, what? Yeah.
So hopefully that does take off a little bit. But there's so many things. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. Yeah. So I'm just following, what I'm propelled to be doing. And right now it's talking to you. So thank you for having me.
Continued success and happiness more than anything. Continued happiness to you and flourish on. Thank you, Natasha Martinez. Follow her on the Complex Project, because there's so many new things coming up. LATV, a place that I've worked at for many, many years. So I love LATV networks. And keep up the good work. Thank you, Natasha.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks.